Good afternoon, everyone. And I encourage everybody just to put their name in the chat and what university they're affiliated with. Um, my name's Robert Joseph Taylor. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan, and in addition to that, I am the principal investigator, one of three multiple PIs for the Michigan Center for African American Urban Aging Research. And we are very happy today to have this presentation by Jim McNally and Kathryn Lavender on secondary data sets that are available here at the University of Michigan. So I want to do a quick introduction. Also, I want to say one or two things before we start. Feel free to ask questions. Just put questions in the Q&A section, and we will get to you. We'll get to as many questions as possible. Um, and in addition, as you know, this is being recorded, and because of that, you'll be able to share this with your colleagues and your students, or to watch it again because there's going to be a lot of very detailed information. So I'm going to introduce our two fantastic speakers. In addition to our research associate, Deborah Robinson. Again, Deborah Robinson has her PhD in psychology from the University of Michigan, and she is a research fellow with the Michigan Center for Urban African American Aging Research. Jim McNally is the director of the NACDA program on aging, a data archive containing over 1,500 studies related to health and aging life course. He holds a PhD in demography and sociology from Brown. His research focuses primarily on issues of family support and health among older adults, both in the United States and internationally. And he does methodological research on repair of deficient data. Most recently, he has been studying the impacts of heterogeneity on health outcomes among older U.S. Asian Pacific Islander populations. Kathryn Lavender is the data project manager for NACDA. She is involved with day-to-day operations, including data deposits, restricted use data agreements, data users requests, as well as long-term planning of NACDA activities in the research community. Kathryn has more than 15 years of experience related to data management and other data activities. So again, please welcome Jim McNally, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, we're full screen. This is excellent. Okay, it's always a pleasure to meet with any of Robert's colleagues. NACDA has been honored and pleased to work with Robert and his projects for at least 2 decades, and it's always fascinating to share our research tools with colleagues. We're going to talk a bit about NACDA and ICPSR researches with an emphasis on HBCU partners. Could we go to the next slide, please? So it's pretty straightforward discussion. I will introduce NACDA and ICPSR and just generally the benefits of secondary data. And then Kathryn will do all the rest of these items, showing how. I'll talk about why. She will show you how to identify data sets, review metadata, obtain the data, cite the data, and so other resources that are available for researchers. Next. Okay. This is sort of data 101, but primary data obviously is the data you collect. You as an investigator go out into the community or a universe of interest and collect, administer, and address a specific topic of interest. We're secondary data. we're the preservation and redistribution element. Our role is to facilitate and expand the impact of primary data research. We store, we organize, and we share primary data collected by researchers such as yourself, offering other colleagues the opportunity to new analysis and to explore the work that's gone on before you. So, next slide. We've always argued that secondary data is important. I remember this was a long time ago when I was trying to plan my own dissertation, and I was frantically trying to design a survey to capture adult orphanhood, and my dissertation mentor said, sit down, be quiet, and think for a second what data is available out there so you don't have to spend 2 years collecting a data set. And in fact, there was a very nice data set already available for me to use. I got my PhD and moved on with my life. So efficiency is very much a part of secondary data use. Collecting data is time consuming and expensive. Good secondary data facilitates this process. It allows you to, at a minimum, test certain ideas. And then if you have to go out and collect a more detailed or focused data set, fine, you've done your groundwork. But you can start with a strong understanding of what is available, what measures work, and question validation. Very important. If you go to an established data set, most of these questions have been field tested, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. It's also the variety. Years ago, um, when I started, you could build your entire career on a single data set. Data was expensive, it was difficult to get, and people would use it over and over again, the same data set. Now there's literally thousands, and I'm not kidding, there's literally thousands of freely available data sets out there. And with the new NIH data sharing guidelines, there's going to be even more. So whatever topic you can think of, in all likelihood, there's already a good solid data set out there that you can use at a minimum to test your ideas, maybe get a couple of publications and go from there. Secondary data is also great for theory testing because it allows for controlled research framework examination. And it also allows for validation and replication of results. And there's also this issue of generalizability. One of the biggest challenges we face, particularly in community-based research, is generalizability. How do we make the questions we ask within a small community, a small understudied population relevant for policy development and impact? Secondary data generally has the advantage of being generalizable. It often doesn't have the sample size for very small populations, but if you were to use the questionnaire from a nationally representative survey and replicate it within a smaller community, then you could do direct comparison of outcomes and make very strong policy recommendations about inequalities and inefficiencies found within the universe of interest. Small populations, small studies, they just have this problem of large numbers, lack of large numbers. So this is some of the tools that are available to you as a secondary data user. Next slide. There's a number of research topics across ICPSR and NACDA, and we'll talk specifically what those two organizations are in just a second. Within NACDA itself, we have this, I forget what these kinds of charts are going, but these are search diagrams, things that are very important or pop up often in the searches for ICPSR and NACDA. We have data on mental health and relationships. We have a lot of data on physical decline and aging and depression. We have data on education and income. We have data on substance abuse and neighborhood and community engagement, among other things. Again, variety. There's virtually no topic you can think of, but we don't have at least some preliminary or basic data on. Next. ICPSR is and I had to memorize this quarter century ago, the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research. It is one of the earliest organized data repository that was built on the idea of data equity, of letting as many people as possible get access to as many data sets as possible. Years ago, and not too many years ago, getting a copy of the National Health Interview Survey from NTIS would have cost you upwards of $1,000, much outside the range of most graduate students and even junior faculty. ICPSR has been distributing the health interview survey for decades. In fact, we have the complete collection of health interview surveys, and you can download it for free. It's free at NCHS now as well, but they learned equity from us. At present, ICPSR more broadly has close to 20,000 studies, which includes multiple files. It has over 6 million variables that we've identified that you can search for at the variable level and compare to other similar variables across studies. And we've also identified well over 100,000 publications that use the data within our collections. So in many cases, you can do a very thorough data review using a specific data set of interest. You can see what people have used it for in the past. You can see what ideas have been published and what ideas still need to be examined. Next. ICPSR calls itself a social science data archive. Its history was in political science. In fact, it used to be ICPS or ICPR. ICPR, yeah, ICPSR. We added the social later, but it's comprised of a variety and growing number of units. Many of them are federally funded. Others are funded by foundations like the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We have a lot of public data. We do have some restricted data. Now, this is also a point I like to make. Restricted data is still publicly available. It simply means you have to go through a couple of extra steps to get it. Many of our data sets, the majority of our data sets, can be directly downloaded on the web with registration. Restricted data sets, you can get them by finding a data use agreement or some other arrangement. You can still get it. Nothing is forbidden. The advantage of working within an established data repository like ICPSR or NACDA is that the data are uniform. They're cleaned, organized, managed, and converted into multiple formats that are similar. If you use one data set from our collection, you can use any data set from our collection because it'll always have the same face, the same presentation, and the same set of associated tools. Equally importantly is we preserve data for long-term use. We never throw anything away. We have been able to supply organizations such as the United States Census Bureau with data after they've destroyed or lost copies of their own original data. Hi, Beverly. Beverly Lyons was our first postdoc for NACDA many years ago and went on to just be an incredibly successful researcher and university administrator. So I saw her name pop up. We adhere to FAIR principles. We're working on the interoperable part. We all are. keep seeing friends' names pop up. This is wonderful. But FAIR means data needs to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Four of those things are simple. Four of those things essentially we establish best practices for. Interoperability, we're all learning. How do we use data sets across groups or across studies? How do we extract variables from different studies and use them effectively? How to identify similar studies? This is actually, if you're looking for an area of research, methodological research, this is the cutting edge of the future. Interoperability is one of the most important challenges we're facing within the data universe at the present time. And if anybody would like to talk about interoperability, I'm always available. That's one of the main things I try to do these days. We're part of the Institute for Social Research, ISR, at the University of Michigan, and we've been around for over 60 years now. Next slide. NACDA is the aging program within ICPSR. I've directed NACDA since 1998 and seen it grow considerably. NACDA was first funded by the Administration on Aging and then picked up by NIA shortly after the initiation of NIA by the National Institutes of Health. We've been continuously funded by NIA for over 45 years now, we'll be hitting 50 soon. Everything in NACDA is freely available because it's paid for with your tax dollars. Anything funded by the federal government at ICPSR is freely available to any interested researcher anywhere in the world, anywhere across the country. We're largely quantitative data. Qualitative data remains a challenge for repositories because of confidentiality issues and how to format it and present it in a manner that allows people to use it systematically. It's another area of tremendous research value if anyone's interested in pursuing it. So we are part of ICPSR, but we're also an independently funded NIA mature R33 program. Next slide. And before I turn it over to Kathryn, we also have an archive that may be of interest specifically to our HBCU partners. The Research Center on Minority Data was the brainchild of Professor Franklin some years ago when he was on the ICPSR Council, and it organizes, aggregates, and structures all minority-related data across the entire ICPSR universe in a way that makes it more searchable and easier to find. So this is a good starting place if you're looking for specifically focused data on racial, ethnic, or gender minorities. And it's a very useful tool. I think that's the end of my presentation, Kathryn. Nope. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, fine. One more slide. I've got a horrible head cold. I'm just glad I haven't exploded into projectile coughing. Do you have access to ICPSR resources? That, Kathryn, has a definite yes. Yes and no. Yes, anything that's federally funded is freely available to anyone in the world. If you are a member of ICPSR, and it's hard to imagine anyone isn't a member of ICPSR at this point, then you have access to everything. If by odd chance you belong to an HBCU or a smaller institution that doesn't have full access to ICPSR, talk to us. We encourage and support research. We're not going to deny anybody access to a data set if it is helpful in developing a student's growth or a faculty member's professional development. So How do you get data from ICPSR and NACDA? And I will turn it over to Kathryn. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, everyone. So we're going to walk through searching the website and some other things. And I can also talk about submitting data as well. But basically, this is what our search page looks like. And you can see that you can search by keyword, phrase, PI name, related publication, pretty much however you feel comfortable. And, we're pretty confident that you will land where you need to with the data. Or you might find out that there's a need for more data in an area, and then that's an opportunity for research that you can then submit to us once you collect it. So when you search our site, the search results default to study. And a study is basically a data collection. It can be a single data set in a study, or it can be a study that has multiple data sets. And so you can see that a search for HBCU comes up with 40 studies that classify as that's somewhere in these data collections. And there's also some variables that have that language in the variable metadata. And it looks like for that specific acronym, only 3 related publications. Obviously, different searches will produce different results. So you should play with it. But first, I want to talk about what makes our search possible, and that's metadata. And metadata is data about data. And so we have collection level metadata or study level metadata, which are things like the title of the study, the description, subject terms, etc., things that make that collection findable. And then there's variable level metadata, which includes variable names and labels, value labels, question text associated with the variables from the original surveys, and more. So ICPSR and NACDA use collection level metadata to form these study pages. And then as you can see from the study page, anyone also has access to the number of downloads and other usage information, and any relevant notes that might be associated with the study. So our study pages are pretty consistent. As Jim said, if you've looked at data from one study, you can pretty much navigate them pretty comfortably across the board. We do have some older collections that have limited file formats and collection level metadata because maybe we haven't gotten the chance to update them yet, but we do respond to user requests if you find an older collection that you want to use. You can also search by related publications. You can see that a search for heart produces more than 300 related publications. And the study that I just highlighted the study page for is the Midlife in the United States study. And that it's longitudinal, and it also has several different surveys, a core survey, biomarker, neuroscience survey, and some restricted data for a specific Milwaukee population. But heart comes up, and you can see that here's this article I sorted by newest publication date, and it shows me which studies this publication is related to or use data from. My favorite way to search is through the variable level metadata. And when you're looking at variables directly from the study pages, you're not downloading anything yet. This is all just out there for you to click through. This is a great example of good, complete variable metadata. We've got the variable name, the variable label, and the question that was associated with, unweighted frequencies, and the values and value labels that are associated with them. And you can't see it because it's not in the screenshot, but there are also some summary statistics beneath the note about how many valid cases there are. My other favorite way to, my favorite thing to say about our search is the variable search. You saw the variable view when you're looking at an individual variable view, but the variable search is great because I think that this is the best way to see, does a data collection really have what you were looking for? If the study was documented with question text, then you'd be searching through the actual questions asked in that survey and seeing the associated variables. So for a search for heart failure produces from the ICPSR site almost 2,000 variables. And throughout this presentation, you're going to see me refer to from the ICPSR site or from the NACDA site. And NACDA uses ICPSR's infrastructure, so we're kind of one and the same. However, NACDA focuses on mostly data collections funded by the National Institute on Aging, but basically we focus on aging in general. But ICPSR, when you search from the ICPSR site, you're searching through all of the sister archives within ICPSR. So a search for heart failure from ICPSR would produce more results than from NACDA, and that might cover different topics, or it would cover different topics than aging for what you might be looking for. So if you locate some data that you want to download and you know it's from a specific study, again, here's our MIDAS study that we're featuring, you would go to the study page and you could click the download button, and that would allow you to either download all the files or specific file formats or just all the documentation. And you would need to check to see the data and documentation tab if there are multiple data sets. This example here is from our daily experiences and well-being in late life study, and you can see that it's not one data file, there's quite a few. And if you only wanted specific data files, you could go to that tab and just download those ones instead of the download all feature. You do need to be logged in to download data. You can download documentation without being logged in, and you can look at the variables, as I noted, without being logged in. But once you decide to download data, you would need to have a Researcher Passport account. It is free and very little info is collected. We don't spam or sell your data. And Researcher Passport is pretty new, but it allows us to use your host institution to authenticate instead of creating like an ICPSR specific account. So it kind of streamlines your access. When you download, after you agree to the terms of use, your download will be a zipped package. And we get a lot of questions about this. And sometimes people are like, oh, why is it a zip package? And that's because we need to capture like a structure that allows us to offer multiple data files or single data files, as well as the metadata associated with the study and the terms of use. So basically, it's a package because we can't just give you a single file without giving you the other information. If you go into your zip package, and in this instance, I downloaded a study with multiple data sets, you'll see that each data set is nested in its own folder. And that study level documentation is included outside of those folders within the zipped package. So whenever you download data from ICPSR and NACDA, you have access to multiple file formats, including SPSS, Stata SAS, but also R, and then the long-term preservation formats, the ASCII and the setup. And for very older studies, the ASCII and the setup used to be the standard. We didn't create the ready-to-go files for SPSS, Stata, and SAS because that just wasn't the standard practice at the time. And we know that a lot of people might not be familiar with that. So, you know, I think that we have resources on YouTube to show you how to read those materials. Most studies come with documentation, and that's usually in a PDF format, but sometimes you might get some Excel documentation or plain text. As I noted, our YouTube channel has some videos about reading ASCII data, and this is a screenshot of that. It would be under ICPSR user support. So now I'm going to show you how to search from related publications to land on a study you might want to download. If you start from the ICPSR site, you can search from the bibliography page for a term. It looks like I started to search for Los Angeles. And then it looks like I went into my search even more and I searched for education and gender. And I sorted by recent editions. When you're searching related publications, you're going to want to sort them, and you have a few different options that are listed here on the slide. And then you're going to want to look through the results and see what studies they're associated with. Sometimes you're going to read the title and you're like, oh, I know right away, that's what I want. Sometimes you have to dive into the publication. So you can see here, these two studies are associated with, or these two related publications are associated with a couple different studies. And if I look at the related publication that's associated with the high school longitudinal study, I want to find out the methodology to determine what variables were used from that data set. So I did like a Control F to do a quick search through the publication and search for like, I was looking for gender. So I was searching for like male or female, and we can see here that in this publication, they note that the HSLS data set asked in general, how would you compare males and females in math? And then there's the value labels, right? So I know that maybe that's a variable I'm interested in. And then I can go to that study page from the related publication and download the data. This particular publication is available from NACDA, which is our arts archive. So if I wanted to look a little bit more and be sure that that variable is in there, as the publication said, I would go from the study page. There's a variables tab you can select. And I would type in language from the question, compare males and females. And you can see that, in fact, that question is there, just as the publication said. Oh, it looks, I'm sorry, it looks a bit like my slides are a little out of order. But anyway, from here, you would decide that you can go back to the download button or to the data and documentation tab and download the files that you want. Say you don't want to or don't have access to statistical software. And you've decided you want to download, but you're like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to use that. We do also have online analysis. It's called SDA. It stands for Survey Documentation Analysis. I think it's out of Berkeley, this tool, and we kind of borrow it from them. And basically this allows you to analyze some of the data online without having software. And what you're seeing here is from the NACDA site, and ICPSR also has this search set up as well. From the NACDA site, there's a preset filter for studies that are available with online analysis. So if I click on that preset filter, we can see that NACDA has more than 1,500 studies with SDA available. If I click on one of those, I would access the SDA from the study page with this Analyze Online SDA button. When you click on that, you're given an option to do just like basic crosstabs or full analysis. And if you click on full analysis, it leads you to a page like this. And bear with me, I'm going to exit my slideshow, and then I'm going to show you online what that looks like briefly. So let me reshare. Sorry about the wait. Okay. Well, can you see cherry blossoms? I think somebody should maybe
Yes.
in the chat. Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so when you search for NACDA, you can search NACDA aging. If you just put in NACDA, we're not the first result, but anyway. So if I go to that preset filter. You can see here it's in this like little bookmark, but also the filter is just on this page where it should be. Well, we'll use that bookmark. And then I'm searching for stuff with SDA. I like to search by released updated to see most recent stuff. So we can see, here's another Midas example. We love Midas. And we're going to do explore data online, full analysis capabilities. It tells me I need to log in, of course. I planned this. I wanted you to see what you would have to go through. These password requirements keep getting longer and longer. Okay, so here's our terms of use. You're basically, whenever you use SDA, it's like downloading the data in a sense. So we ask you to agree to the same terms of use because we want to ensure responsible and ethical use of the data and that people don't reshare it. And that's basically what you're agreeing to. So you would agree. And then here we are in the SDA. And the SDA is nice because the variables have been organized into these groups, basically. And you can go through them and see, you know, again, this is where the variable level metadata becomes really important because we wouldn't be able to see what these are without those clear labels. And say I just want to do a quick, I want to see a frequency. I would click on the variable and then hit view. And I can see unweighted frequencies here just from the website. Again, I haven't downloaded anything. But say I want to run a crosstab and I do gender again, and maybe I want that to be in the row. And then let's see, word list recall. Let's see, word list recall. How about we try this one and put that in column? I'm going to leave it unweighted just for simplicity's sake. And then hit run the table. And I can see right here the breakdown of this word list recall question by gender. And there's some charts and, you know, more information about the valid cases. And this is just a glimpse of what this can do. I'll admit I'm not a researcher, so there's a lot to using this that I can't demonstrate in this example, but
one of the strengths of the SDA program is its speed.
Yeah.
It's designed differently than a lot of other statistical packages. So you can create crosstabs. You can do multivariate analysis, but and the numbers are legitimate, but what it allows you to do is very quickly go through a number of studies and see what the results are. It'll go through a million cases. It'll do the mortality detail file, for example. You can very quickly analyze multiple years of the multiple mortality detail file. Boom, boom, boom. And it gives you, again, a way of exploring data. And also, if you're teaching statistics, it allows you to do different statistical functions, standard error, z-statistics, p-values, chi-squares, different things.
Yeah.
So if you're teaching statistics, it's also a very useful tool because you don't have to teach your students how to write SAS code. They can do that on their own. So that's one of the
Thanks, Jim.
reasons we like that. Yep.
Thanks. Yeah. So in the analysis tab, you can see the different options that are available. And so now I'm going to stop sharing again and go back to my slides. So again, please bear with me. Here we are. Okay, thanks everybody. All right, so SDA is great and you can use that and look at frequencies that way. But say you run into some data that is restricted and you want to access it. We have a whole page from the ICPSR site about accessing restricted data. and the variety of elements that might include. The short answer to this is that every study is a unique butterfly and they all have different terms that you would need to agree to. So read the restricted data use agreement. That's the most important thing. If you are like, how would I know if something's restricted? This can be identified from the study page. There's usually this red background font that's highlighted, and then there should be a button for accessing restricted data, which would allow you to download the restricted data use agreement. Say you've used data and you want to be added to our related publications, and you also want to cite the data. The citation is available right from the study page. You can copy and paste it or export it as you need to. And it would just be, as part of our default view on the study page. And how you submit it to us is that on any study page, there's an option to suggest a new citation from the data related publications tab. Or, you could email us and ask us to have it added. There's also a form from the ICPSR site, and those links are active. So when you get these slides, you can check them out. You can also share syntax and research through our open archives, Open ICPSR, and NACDA has a version called NACDA-OAR for Open Aging Repository. And for NACDA specifically, this is important because it's a way where we can support the gerontological community that might not be funded by the National Institute on Aging, but the research is still relevant and you want it discoverable and you want it preserved. And so the self-publishing option is a great way to get a DOI and share your data and meet requirements for data management and sharing plans. And then also for replication analysis, if you've done some analysis and you want others to be able to use your syntax, this is a great way to upload that and then see its use, because we provide usage statistics for our open studies just like we would our curated studies. We have also, NACDA does, we have a collectical portal, and this is a different way of displaying longitudinal data. The login credentials are going to be different than ICPSR's Researcher Passport. Used to be called My Data. I haven't updated that yet, sorry. Old habits die hard, So yes, the collectical portal is just a slightly different display. What we've done is compare across longitudinal studies across their different time points, but we've also compared some series to each other. So what you see here is a comparison of NSHAP, and it's got this side-by-side view. But we've also compared NSHAP to MIDAS, the Midlife United States study. We've compared it to the National Health and Aging Trends Study and others. Excuse me. I've mentioned we have YouTube resources. ICPSR does, but also there's a NACDA playlist from the ICPSR YouTube. And you can see all of our recorded webinars and our researcher interviews. Jim mentioned that if you're teaching about data, you can use SDA, and there are some really great examples from ICPSR's instructional resources page that kind of show you, they're like kind of pre-made plans for teaching students to work with certain studies. If you have questions at any time, you can email icpsr-help@umich.edu, and we handle questions about the data, about access, other concerns you might have, and the email is always open, so you can send us a note anytime. We will be at the Population Association of America conference, NACDA will, and ICPSR will be at these other conferences, MPRA and AERA. And you can check out ICPSR's events page for more details on that. We also have a variety of newsletters available from ICPSR. NACDA has its own. And at the very end, I have a link tree that will take you to all of the important NACDA links, but I just wanted to highlight this in case there are other newsletters across ICPSR that you might be interested in. Some other data resources that we support, even though we don't host data the Health and Retirement Study, HRS, the National Health and Aging Trends Study, NHATS, I mentioned that one. The Gateway to Global Aging is also a great resource to discover HRS sister study variables that compare across each other. You still have to go to their respective organizations to get the data, but it's still for discoverability and comparability, it's a great display. The Roper Center has lots of public opinion polls. GACES is a German data archive, and CESTA is a European data archive. And then, of course, there's the CDC. And if you haven't heard about iAssist, it's not a data center, but it is a good international resource for people involved in information technology, data management, librarians, and social sciences. And it's they have a really great forum where you can pretty much ask anybody a question and get a response. So thank you, everyone. We can go through the questions for anything I didn't cover, but here we have a QR code and you can scan this and get access to our link tree. And that link tree has our NACDA website, our portal, our YouTube playlists, newsletter sign up, and links about data sharing from NIH. And so I'm going to leave this up, I think, and then we can take questions.
Yes, Kathryn, thank you very much. There are a few questions in the chat, and I have a few questions for both you and Jim. And if you don't mind, just for time's sake, just if we can have short answers. And again, for everybody, please add questions to the Q&A. Try not to add them to the chat. It's harder to keep up if they're in the chat than in the Q&A. So number one, again, for our HBCU partners, just if you don't mind reiterating how they can access the data, and not how, I should say, that the fact that they do have access to the data.
Yes. So everyone has access to NACDA data, and this is because NACDA is federally funded. And I'm actually going to stop sharing because it does make it hard to see. Sorry about that. Okay, so yes, everyone has access to NACDA data because we're federally funded and we're required by NIA to provide the data, and it's at no cost. ICPSR data is available to member institutions, but we have more than 800 member institutions. So the chances are that you're affiliated with a member institution, which means you have access to all of ICPSR's data as well. But Jim, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think, the thing, increasingly, the federal funding is making a larger support effort for a lot of our projects. So we also provide, you can get full access to criminal justice data, to health data. There's the demography archive. There's the HIV and drug abuse archives. There's a variety of topical archives within ICPSR that are funded by the federal government, and all of that is free. As Kathryn says, virtually everyone is a member of ICPSR, but again, we don't want to cut anybody off, particularly in light of the new federal regulations on data sharing. There's always a way. If there's a very unusual data set that for some reason is restricted to ICPSR membership and you're not a member, talk to us. We'll find a way to support your research. There's no difference whatsoever between an HBCU institution and any other institution in the United States or the world in terms of access and opportunity. Having worked with some of the smaller HBCUs over the years, I understand sometimes there's issues of software access and what have you not, but we can talk about those issues. I think the other issue is support. We're there for you. We're facilitators of research. Our job is to help you be successful as an educator, as a researcher, and as a faculty member or student. So don't be shy about reaching out to us. Send us an email, set up an e-visit. We're always happy to talk to people about their research interests and see how we can help them. Having problem with the data set? Let us know. We'll help you sort it out. Can't find a data set? I'm always interested in that. What is not available to you right now? Maybe we can find it. Or if you know of data we don't have and should have, let us know so we can seek it out. Our job is to help you and your students be successful. So don't be shy. Don't ever be afraid to pick up that phone and call us. Otherwise, I'm going to sit around and read the New York Times, and that doesn't do me any good whatsoever.
Thanks, Jim. So I have some, well, part of this will be comments and part of this will be questions. So just a few comments. It's really important to remember that this archive is not only helpful for your research, but it's also helpful for your students. As we know, many students have a hard time finding data, or they collect their own data, and it may take them years to collect their own data. And sometimes that data is not nearly as good as what's freely available. And as we know, a good dissertation is a done dissertation. So clearly, it's important to use and access this data. And to remember, if you have a student or yourself, and you are collecting data and you have say, a $20,000 grant, it's not going to compare to somebody who has a $5 million grant and the data that they have, that is up on this through NACDA or through ICPSR. So here's some other questions. Is there data available from surveys in the Spanish language? I guess a second or two on that, and then like an international data that's available.
Well, Kathryn, aren't we working right now with Puerto Rico on translations?
Yes, we are. So, I forget the full name of the acronym, but the acronym is PREHCO, PRECO, and let me see if I can share my screen. But we have other data collections which originate in the Spanish language, and this is across ICPSR and NACDA. One that I can think of is also CRELS, the Costa Rican
Yes.
longitudinal study. And anyway, for the Puerto Rican study that I mentioned, we're about to get the newest data, and that data provider has translated that data to English from the Spanish language. And CRELS, also, we're currently working to update the question text across all waves. I think we have 3 waves of CRELS. And anyway, that updated question text is going to be in English and in Spanish. And those are just a couple examples from NACDA. I used to work with the ICPSR archive, which is the member-funded archive. And I know that they also have some collections that originate in Spanish. So you might go to the search and try to look for the populations that you're interested in and see if those studies then have Spanish versions available. Often, if we can't provide the question text in both English and Spanish, we'll at least ask for the original surveys so that you can see the original survey in its language. And that would be true for any study in any other language, wherever possible that we can get that.
Thank you. We have, if you could put in the chat the link to NACDA.
Sure.
I think that would be helpful. And again, I really mentioned we're going to put this presentation. It's been recorded. Could you also let people know where this recording will be?
Sure. So I think that we need to talk about that, whether it's going to live on YouTube or on the NACDA site, or maybe from the MCUAAAR Center. So
Or
as soon
multiple
as
sites, really.
or multiple,
Yeah,
maybe
multiple,
deep,
yeah.
yeah, maybe Deep Blue. So as soon as we figure that out, we will let you know. But I have all the registered users' emails, so I'll make sure to email everyone when we have the slides and the recording all ready for public consumption, and send it out so that you have direct access to it.
Thank you. And we having this recorded is very valuable because as you know, there's a lot of information that was given. None of this is very difficult, but it's impossible to remember all these details. But
Yes.
watching it again will be extremely helpful, and watching it slowly, will be very helpful. Um, I have a
Yeah.
few more questions here. Um, could you tell us a little bit about the process for submitting data to ICPSR?
Yes. I anticipated that question because I saw it in the chat earlier. So I just pulled up. Can you see our deposit page right now?
Yes.
It's okay, great. So when you submit something to ICPSR, like from the ICPSR page, there's the share data option. And you could start here if you're not sure where your data should go. But if you're pretty sure that it should go to NACDA, whether it's our curated or our self-published repository, you would start with the NACDA page and go to deposit data. We have some resources here for determining which way you should go. Like there's a decision tree, there's some depositor information, best practices. We also have some FAQs here in our bookmarks. But you can also just email us and ask to help. But if you have the time, we recommend that you go to our deposit page, review the information, understand the best practices. But essentially, the process for submitting data is that you have to fill out a form and you have to give us metadata. And these are the things that make your data set discoverable later. And this is true whether it's self-published or curated. And it's part of that thing that Jim mentioned at the beginning, the FAIR, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And as Jim noted, a lot of institutions, a lot of data organizations, they do findable and accessible pretty well, but interoperable and reusable, we're still kind of working out. But the key to doing all of that and meeting any kind of data sharing requirements is metadata. And so you'll go to deposit data, you'll pick an archive, hopefully NACDA if it's on aging, and then you'll fill out a form with all the necessary information. And we have in the best practices document right here, we also have some recommendations for how you might manage your materials, particularly if they're longitudinal. There are some things about naming and consistency that you need to keep in mind as you're collecting and managing the materials. So yeah, I don't know if I just gave you more questions, but yeah.
No, this is Kathryn. That's extremely helpful. Another point for everybody is to not only think about this. When we think about archives like this, a lot of it's our own research, or maybe our doctoral students. But one thing to also think about is in terms of your teaching. A lot of times you may not have the resources available, or we may do analysis on Excel as an example, but through this website, again, you can use the SDA, the data analysis, and you can use it with your teaching and set up some assignments for students, and that they can do the analysis themselves with some guidance from you. Okay, but most importantly, all they need is a laptop and an internet connection to be able to do that type of analysis. So again, this is a very high. You get a lot of bang for absolutely no buck. Are
Robert,
there
could
any?
I?
Yes.
Yeah, Kathryn, could you put up your slides again? You went very quickly through some conferences where NACDA will be and other people, but you use the acronym. Could you just mention what those conferences are from your slides? that you were showing?
Sure. I actually grabbed that information from ICPSR's events page. Can you see the events page right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the MPSA conference is the Midwest Political Science Association Conference. And that looks like it's at the beginning of April in Chicago. And then AERA is the, I should know this off the top of my head. Let's see if this American Educational Research Association. And that is also in April, in mid-April. And then PAA is the Population Association of America. I know the one that we go to be fair. And our aging archive and our demography archive will be there, and that's like later April. And yeah, we'll both have booths. Stop by and say hi. And you know, hopefully you can find out more about events that are coming up from the ICPSR events page. I mentioned IASIS, that's another conference, and that acronym is way too long for me to say. It's international, it's information technology, social sciences. But yeah.
So again, I'm gonna check, are there any more questions? And yes, as you see in the chat, you'll see information on how you can reach people from NACDA. I'm gonna put in my, Deborah, if you don't mind putting in your email address, I will put in my email address in case people have any questions for me. And if there's no more questions, I think we'll bring this to a close. Again, thank you everybody for all this great information. This is extremely helpful. And as we stated, it's both helpful for for your research, for your mentoring, as well as your teaching. All of this is really important. So again, I'm going to just close this by thanking Dr. James McNally, Dr. Deborah Robinson, and Dr. Kathryn Lavender for a great presentation. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for inviting us, and we're always there for you, so
Yes,
don't be
yes.
shy.
Thank you, Jim.